5 sets a night, $6 total. No breaks, no bathroom, just play until your fingers bled, then play some more. That was the deal at Cafe Wha in 1966, and Jimi Hendrix took it because he had $17 to his name and nowhere else to go. What happened during those brutal 5 sets would either kill his dream or make him a legend. Nobody, including Jimi, knew which one it would be. Greenwich Village, New York City, October 1966. The air was getting colder, and Jimi Hendrix was running out of time and money. He'd been in New York for 3 months, sleeping on friends' couches, carrying his guitar everywhere because he couldn't afford to leave it anywhere safe. The Fender 5 sets a night, $6 total. No breaks, no bathroom, just play until your fingers bled, then play some more. That was the deal at Cafe Wha in 1966, and Jimi Hendrix took it because he had $17 to his name and nowhere else to go. What happened during those brutal 5 sets would either kill his dream or make him a legend. Nobody, including Jimi, knew which one it would be. Greenwich Village, New York City, October 1966. The air was getting colder, and Jimi Hendrix was running out of time and money. He'd been in New York for 3 months, sleeping on friends' couches, carrying his guitar everywhere because he couldn't afford to leave it anywhere safe. The Fender Stratocaster was literally all he owned, besides the clothes on his back and $17 in his pocket. Every club on Bleecker Street had turned him down. Too black for the white clubs, too rock and roll for the jazz clubs, too weird for everyone. His playing style was unlike anything anyone had heard before. Aggressive, sensual, experimental. It scared people. It confused them. Nobody knew what to do with Jimi Hendrix. Cafe Wha was his last option. Not his last choice, his last option. The club sat at the corner of MacDougal and Minetta Lane, down a narrow staircase that descended into what felt like a dungeon. The ceiling was so low that tall people had to duck. The walls were black, covered in peeling posters and graffiti. The stage was barely a stage, just a slightly raised platform in the corner with a single spotlight that worked half the time. But Cafe Wha had something other clubs didn't. They were always desperate for musicians. The club owner, Manny Roth, had a simple business model. Pack the place with tourists and college kids looking for an authentic Greenwich Village experience, charge them a cover and minimum drink requirement, and churn through musicians like they were disposable. 5 sets a night, 6 nights a week, $6 per night. Take it or leave it. Jimi took it. His first night was a Tuesday. The deal was simple and brutal. Play from 8 p.m. until 2 a.m. with exactly 15 minutes between each set. No set could be shorter than 45 minutes, no repeating songs in the same night, and if the crowd started leaving, play louder, play faster, play whatever it took to keep them buying drinks. Most musicians lasted a week before quitting. The physical toll was too much. Playing guitar for 6 hours straight, night after night, destroyed your hands. Your fingers would blister, then the blisters would pop, then you'd play on raw flesh. Your back would ache from standing, your voice would give out, your spirit would break. But Jimi had nowhere else to go. The first set started at 8 p.m. The crowd was typical for a Tuesday night, maybe 30 people, mostly NYU students, and a few tourists who'd wandered down the stairs out of curiosity. Jimi plugged his Stratocaster into the house amp, a battered Fender twin reverb that had seen better days, and started with a cover of Hey Joe. The response was polite but unimpressed. A few people clapped, most kept talking. Jimi moved on to Wild Thing, then Like a Rolling Stone, then some Muddy Waters, standard cover songs that every bar band in America was playing. The crowd was mildly entertained but not amazed. This was Greenwich Village. They'd seen hundreds of guitar players come through this basement. The first 15-minute break came, and Jimi's hands were already aching. He sat on a broken stool in the storage room that served as a dressing room, drinking water from a plastic cup and looking at his fingers. They were already starting to blister. 4 more sets to go. The second set started at 9:15 p.m. The crowd had grown to maybe 50 people. Manny Roth stood at the back, watching with his arms crossed. The message was clear: fill this room or find another job. Jimi played the same cover songs, trying to inject more energy, more showmanship. He bent strings until they nearly broke. He played behind his head. He used his teeth on the fretboard. A few people in the crowd started paying attention. One guy in the front row stopped talking to his date and actually watched, but most people still treated the music as background noise, just another guitar player in a city full of guitar players. During the second break, Jimi noticed his fingers were bleeding, not badly, but enough that they left small red marks on his guitar strings. He wrapped them in toilet paper and went back out for set 3. The third set started at 10:30 p.m. This was the crucial set, late enough that the after-dinner crowd was arriving, but early enough that people were still sober and critical. Jimi could feel his energy flagging. His fingers hurt with every note. The toilet paper wrapped around them was already soaked through. He started the set with another cover, but halfway through Sunshine of Your Love, something inside him snapped. Maybe it was exhaustion, maybe it was frustration, maybe it was just the realization that if he was going to fail, he might as well fail playing his own way. He stopped following the standard arrangements. He started stretching notes, bending them in ways that shouldn't work but somehow did. He made his guitar scream, moan, whisper. He played with the feedback from the amp, turning noise into music. He closed his eyes and stopped trying to impress anyone and just played what he felt. The crowd reaction was mixed. Some people looked confused. A few walked out, but others stopped their conversations mid-sentence and stared. One woman in the back literally put down her drink and moved closer to the stage. During the third break, Manny Roth approached Jimi in the storage room. "What the hell was that?" he asked. Jimi thought he was about to be fired. "Sorry, man, I'll stick to the covers." "No," Manny said, and there was something different in his voice. "Do more of that weird shit, whatever you were just doing. The people who stayed were actually buying drinks." The fourth set started at 11:45 p.m. Jimi's hands were in bad shape now. The blisters had definitely popped. Every string press sent sharp pain up his fingers. His back ached. His voice was getting hoarse. But he'd gotten permission to be himself, and that changed everything. He played like a man possessed. He forgot about the pain. He forgot about the $6. He forgot about everything except the sounds coming out of his guitar. He made that Stratocaster sing, cry, rage, and whisper. He played notes that bent in impossible directions. He created feedback loops that sounded like spaceships or screaming eagles or howling. The fourth set started at 11:45 p.m. Jimi's hands were in bad shape now. The blisters had definitely popped. Every string press sent sharp pain up his fingers. His back ached. His voice was getting hoarse. But he'd gotten permission to be himself, and that changed everything. He played like a man possessed. He forgot about the pain. He forgot about the $6. He forgot about everything except the sounds coming out of his guitar. He made that Stratocaster sing, cry, rage, and whisper. He played notes that bent in impossible directions. He created feedback loops that sounded like spaceships or screaming eagles or howling wolves. The crowd was no longer polite. They were either completely transfixed or actively hostile. There was no middle ground. Some people shouted for him to stop. Others shouted for him to keep going. One guy in the front row looked like he was having a religious experience. A couple in the back got up and left, telling Manny the music was too weird. But 3 people came down the stairs specifically because someone outside told them they had to hear the crazy guitar player. Among the new arrivals was a man named John Hammond Jr.
He was the son of the legendary record producer John Hammond Sr., and he'd heard rumors about a wild guitar player working at Cafe Wha. He stood in the back, watching, saying nothing. The fourth set ended at 12:45 a.m. Jimmy could barely hold his guitar. His fingers were definitely bleeding now, not wrapped in toilet paper, just raw and bleeding onto the strings. He had one more set to go, one more 45 minutes, the hardest set of all, because by 1 a.m. most clubs were closing and crowds were thin and drunk and hard to impress. He sat in the storage room during the break, looking at his hands. The fingers on his left hand were the worst, the ones that pressed the strings. They were covered in blood and clear fluid from the popped blisters. Playing would be agony. But he needed the $6, and more than that, something had changed during that fourth set. Something had clicked. For the first time since arriving in New York, he'd felt like himself on stage. The fifth set started at 1:15 a.m. The crowd had dwindled to maybe 20 people. The hardcore drinkers, the insomniacs, the music obsessives who stayed in clubs until closing time. And John Hammond Jr., still standing in the back, still watching. Jimmy knew this set would either be his worst or his best. His body was beyond tired. His hands were beyond painful. Every note hurt. But pain has a way of stripping away everything false, everything performative. When you're in that much pain, you can't fake anything. You can only be real. He started with a song no one recognized. Maybe it was something he'd written. Maybe he was making it up on the spot. But it was unlike anything he'd played all night. It was raw and vulnerable and angry and beautiful all at once. His guitar didn't sound like a guitar anymore. It sounded like a living thing, crying and screaming and laughing. The few people left in the club stopped talking completely. Even the bartender stopped pouring drinks and watched. Jimmy played with his eyes closed, blood from his fingers staining the guitar body, his entire body swaying with the music. He moved from that unknown song into a version of Hey Joe that bore almost no resemblance to the one he'd played in the first set. This version was darker, more complex, more dangerous. He made the guitar talk in complete sentences. He made it tell the story better than the lyrics could. John Hammond Jr. pushed forward through the small crowd, moving closer to the stage. His face showed something between shock and awe.
Jimmy kept playing. He went into Wild Thing, but this time he completely reimagined it. He took a simple 3-chord song and turned it into an epic. He built it slowly, teasing it, making the guitar sound like it was barely holding back something violent. Then he let it explode in a cascade of feedback and distortion that somehow, impossibly, still sounded musical. One string broke. He kept playing with 5 strings. Another string broke. He kept playing with 4. The pain in his fingers was excruciating now, but he was beyond caring. He was in a place beyond pain, beyond exhaustion, beyond anything except pure expression. He ended the 5th set at exactly 2 a.m. with a note that seemed to hang in the air forever, a sustained feedback loop that gradually faded into silence. The 20 people left in the club erupted in applause, real applause, not polite applause, the kind of applause that says you just witnessed something that changed you. Jimmy unplugged his guitar and nearly collapsed. Manny Roth helped him to the storage room and brought him water. Jesus Christ, kid, what the hell was that? Jimmy couldn't answer. He was looking at his hands. They were a mess, bleeding, swollen, covered in broken blisters. He'd need at least 2 days before he could play again, maybe 3. That's when John Hammond Jr. walked into the storage room. "I need to talk to you," he said. What happened in that conversation would change Jimmy's life. John Hammond Jr. was connected to everyone in the New York music scene. He knew club owners, producers, musicians, managers, and he'd just watched Jimi Hendrix transform a basement club into a holy space through nothing but a beaten-up Stratocaster and raw talent. "You can't keep doing this," John said, gesturing at Jimmy's destroyed hands. "5 sets a night is killing you." But what you just did in that last set, that's what you need to be doing in front of real audiences, in real venues, not in a basement for $6. Over the next hour, while Jimmy soaked his hands in ice water, John made phone calls. He got Jimmy a gig opening for him at a better club. He introduced him to Linda Keith, Keith Richards' girlfriend, who would later introduce Jimmy to Chaz Chandler from The Animals. He started the chain of events that would lead Jimmy to going to London, forming the Jimi Hendrix experience, and becoming a legend. But none of that would have happened if Jimmy had quit during those brutal 5 sets, if he'd given up when his fingers started bleeding, if he'd played it safe and stuck to the covers, if he'd been too tired or too hurt to give everything he had to that 5th set in front of 20 people at 2 a.m. Jimmy played at Cafe Wha for 2 more weeks before getting better opportunities. Every night was still 5 sets. Every night still destroyed his hands. But every night he played like it was his last chance to be heard. And every night someone new discovered him. Word spread through Greenwich Village. There's this crazy guitar player at Cafe Wha who bleeds onto his strings and makes sounds that shouldn't be possible.
By November, Jimmy was gone from Cafe Wha, on his way to London and immortality. But he never forgot those nights in the basement. Years later, when he was famous and playing sold-out arenas, he would sometimes look at his scarred fingers and remember the club where he learned that real artistry requires blood, sweat, and the willingness to give everything you have, even when you're playing for $6 in front of 20 people. Manny Roth kept the broken strings from Jimmy's 5th set that first night. He put them in a frame behind the bar with a handwritten note, Jimi Hendrix, October 1966, the night genius bled. The frame stayed there for years, a reminder to every struggling musician who played that stage. Greatness doesn't come from comfort. It comes from being willing to destroy yourself for your art, even when nobody's watching. The musicians who came after Jimmy at Cafe Wha heard the stories. They heard about the 5 sets and the bleeding fingers and the 6th set that changed everything. Some quit, realizing they didn't have that kind of commitment. Others stayed and pushed themselves harder, trying to find their own version of that transformative moment. Cafe Wha became legendary partly because of Jimmy, but more because of what Jimmy proved there. That the difference between a good musician and a great one isn't talent. It's not even opportunity. It's the willingness to play your 5th set like it's your first, to bleed and keep playing, to be in pain and still find beauty, to give everything when you have nothing left to give. In 1967, less than a year after those brutal nights at Cafe Wha, Jimi Hendrix would walk onto the stage at the Monterey Pop Festival and set his guitar on fire in front of thousands of people and become an instant legend. But the real fire had already happened in a basement in Greenwich Village, where a broke, desperate guitarist played 5 sets for $6 and refused to quit even when his fingers bled. That's the real Jimi Hendrix story, not the one about fame and drugs and tragedy, the one about showing up when you have $17 to your name, about playing when it hurts, about being yourself when everyone tells you you're too weird, about that 5th set at 2 a.m. when you're beyond exhausted, but you play anyway, because that's what artists do. If this story of perseverance and sacrifice moved you, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Share it with someone who's struggling with their own dream. Have you ever had to push through pain to achieve something that mattered? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to turn on notifications for more untold stories about the blood, sweat, and tears behind music's greatest legends.